Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in every life when pain does not come from strangers, but from people we trusted, people we loved, people we expected to protect us. Words were spoken that cut deeply, actions were taken that left scars, and silence was used as a weapon that wounded the heart. When you have been hurt, it is natural to ask questions. Why did this happen to me? Why did God allow it? Why does the one who caused the pain seem to move forward while I am left carrying the weight of it all? These questions are honest, and God is not offended by them. He knows the ache in your heart even before you put it into words. One of the greatest truths we must understand is that God is fully aware of everything that happens to His children. No betrayal escapes His notice, no injustice slips past His attention, and no tear falls without being seen. When someone hurts you, it may feel as if God is silent, but silence does not mean absence. God often works in ways we cannot immediately recognize, and His purposes are always deeper than our pain. He is never careless with your suffering. He never wastes it. What feels like a wound today can become a place of wisdom, strength, and deeper faith tomorrow. When people hurt you, your first impulse may be to defend yourself, to seek revenge, or to demand that justice be done immediately. That response is human, but God calls us to a higher path. He does not ask you to deny your pain or pretend it did not matter. He asks you to trust Him with it. Trusting God does not mean approving of what was done to you. It means placing the outcome into hands that are perfectly just and infinitely wise. God alone sees the full picture. He knows the motives of every heart, including the one that wounded you. God deals with those who hurt you in ways that are always right, even when they are not immediate. Sometimes He confronts them quietly through their conscience. Sometimes He allows consequences to unfold over time. Sometimes He uses circumstances to humble them, to bring them face to face with the truth about themselves. And sometimes in His mercy, He brings them to repentance and change. What God never does is ignore wrongdoing. Justice may not come on your timetable, but it will come according to His perfect plan. At the same time, God is doing something very important in you. While you may be focused on the person who caused the pain, God is focused on healing your heart. He understands that bitterness, if left unchecked, can imprison you long after the offense is past. That is why He gently calls you to forgiveness. Forgiveness is not saying the hurt was small. It is saying that God is bigger. Forgiveness is an act of faith, not a feeling. You may forgive while still hurting, while still healing, while still learning to trust again. When you choose forgiveness, you are not letting the other person escape responsibility. You are releasing yourself from the burden of carrying anger that was never meant to live in your heart. God knows that unforgiveness poisons the soul, steals your peace, and clouds your vision. He desires freedom for you, not chains. Forgiveness opens the door for God to work deeply within you, restoring joy, clarity, and strength that pain tried to steal. There are times when God protects you by removing people from your life who continue to harm you. Love does not require you to remain in situations that destroy your well-being. God values your heart, your mind, and your future. Setting boundaries is not a lack of faith. It is often an act of wisdom. God may distance you from those who hurt you, not to punish them, but to preserve you. In that space, He rebuilds what was broken and reminds you of your worth. You may wonder why God does not simply change the hearts of those who hurt you immediately. The truth is, God never forces anyone to choose what is right. He invites, He warns, He convicts, but He allows free will. What He does promise is that no act of obedience on your part is ever wasted. Every time you choose trust over bitterness, prayer over retaliation, humility over pride, you grow stronger in ways you may not see right away. God also uses your experience to shape compassion within you. Those who have been deeply hurt often become the most understanding, the most patient, the most gracious. Your pain can become a source of comfort for others who walk a similar road. God has a way of turning wounds into wells from which others can draw hope. What once felt like a curse can become a calling to encourage, to uplift, and to remind others that healing is possible. Do not measure God's faithfulness by how quickly things change around you. Measure it by how He sustains you within the storm. When you feel weak, He gives strength. When you feel confused, He offers guidance. When you feel alone, He draws near. God's presence in your pain is proof that you have not been abandoned. He walks with you through the valley, not just toward the destination. In time, you will look back and see that God was working in ways you could not have imagined. You will see how He protected you from greater harm, how He refined your character, how He deepened your dependence on Him. The hurt may not define you, but the way you trusted God through it will shape who you become. God's justice is sure, His mercy is deep, and His love for you is unchanging. When others hurt you, God remains faithful, and He will carry you forward with purpose, peace, and hope. There is a deep comfort in knowing that nothing you experience is hidden from God. Every moment of pain, every quiet tear, every sleepless night caused by hurt has already passed through His loving awareness. When someone wounds you with their words, betrays your trust, or treats you unjustly, it can feel as though the world keeps moving while your heart stands still. In those moments, you may wonder if anyone truly understands the depth of what you are carrying. God does. He is not distant, distracted, or unaware. He sees the injury not only on the surface, but also the damage it leaves within your spirit. God's awareness is not passive observation. It is active care. He does not merely notice your pain, He responds to it with compassion. Long before you try to explain your feelings in prayer, He already knows them. He understands the confusion that follows betrayal, the anger that rises from injustice, and the sadness that lingers when trust is broken. Even when others minimize your pain or tell you to move on too quickly, God never dismisses what you feel. He takes your hurt seriously because He takes you seriously. Sometimes the most painful part of being hurt is the sense of invisibility, the feeling that what happened to you does not matter. God's awareness counters that lie. Your life is precious to Him, and so is your emotional well-being. When you are wronged, He does not look the other way. When you are misunderstood, He knows the truth. When your intentions are questioned, He sees your heart clearly. Nothing about your experience is exaggerated in His eyes. He knows exactly how heavy the burden is that you are carrying. It is important to remember that God's knowledge of your hurt existed even before the situation unfolded. He was not surprised by what happened to you. That does not mean He caused it, but it does mean He was prepared to walk with you through it. He already knew what you would need to survive it, what strength would be required, and what healing would have to take place afterward. God's foresight is always matched with provision. Where pain enters, His grace is already present. When someone hurts you, it can seem as though they have the upper hand, especially if they appear unaffected or unbothered by their actions. But God's awareness extends to them as well. He knows their motives, their intentions, and the truth behind their behavior. You may never receive an apology. You may never hear them admit what they did wrong. Yet God's knowledge of the situation is complete. He sees what others deny and understands what they hide. That truth alone can bring peace to a wounded heart. God's awareness also means that He knows the long-term impact of the hurt, not just the moment it occurred. He sees how it affects your trust, your confidence, and your relationships. He understands why you hesitate now where you once felt free. He knows why certain memories still trigger pain even after time has passed. Healing is not rushed in God's presence. He allows you the space to process, to grieve, and to grow without shame. There are times when you may feel guilty for still hurting, especially if others think you should be over it by now. God never shames you for the pace of your healing. He knows that wounds heal differently depending on their depth. Some injuries require patience, tenderness, and time. God's awareness includes understanding your limits and meeting you exactly where you are. He does not demand strength you do not yet have. He supplies it gradually as you lean on Him. Knowing that God sees your hurt also reminds you that you are not alone in carrying it. You do not have to rehearse the pain endlessly in your mind or protect yourself with walls that keep everyone out. God invites you to bring your honest emotions to Him, not filtered, not polished, but real. He can handle your questions, your frustration, and even your silence. His awareness is steady and unchanging, even when your emotions are not. As you walk forward, this truth becomes an anchor for your soul. You may not always understand why the hurt happened, but you can trust that God understands you completely. His eyes are on you in moments of weakness and in moments of strength. He watches over your heart with care, knowing exactly what it needs and when it needs it, remaining attentive to every detail of your journey and every step you take toward healing and restoration. When someone hurts you, one of the hardest struggles is watching them continue life as if nothing happened while you are left dealing with the consequences. It can seem unfair, even unbearable, to see no immediate accountability. In those moments, it is easy to believe that justice depends on your actions, your words, or your ability to defend yourself. Yet God invites you to release that burden because true justice is never rested in human hands. God handles those who hurt you with perfect wisdom, seeing every detail, every motive, and every outcome long before it becomes visible to you. God's justice is never rushed, and it is never careless. Human justice often demands instant results, but God's justice operates on a higher level, one that considers not only the act itself, but the heart behind it and the eternal consequences tied to it. When someone wrongs you, God does not overlook it. He does not excuse it. He does not minimize it. He simply chooses to address it in a way that serves His greater purpose, even when that purpose is not immediately clear to you. There are times when God allows the person who hurt you to continue without obvious consequences, and this can be deeply confusing, but delay does not mean denial. God may be working in ways that are invisible, shaping circumstances, softening hearts, or allowing patterns to reveal themselves over time. What seems like freedom to you may actually be patience extended by God, offering an opportunity for reflection and change. God's mercy often precedes His correction, and His correction, when it comes, is always just. God also knows when confrontation is necessary and when silence speaks louder. Sometimes He addresses wrongdoing through the quiet voice of conscience, stirring restlessness within the one who caused the pain. Other times He allows life itself to become the teacher, letting choices produce consequences that cannot be ignored. These processes may take time, but they are never random. God is intentional in every step, and His timing is guided by wisdom far beyond human understanding. One of the greatest challenges you face is resisting the urge to take matters into your own hands. Retaliation may feel satisfying in the moment, but it often creates new wounds rather than healing old ones. God knows this, which is why He calls you to trust Him as the ultimate judge. When you step back and allow God to work, you protect your own heart from becoming hardened by anger. You also free yourself from carrying a responsibility that was never yours to bear. God's way of dealing with those who hurt you is also deeply connected to His desire for your growth. As difficult as it may be to accept, seasons of injustice often reveal where your trust truly lies. When you choose to rely on God rather than your own understanding, your faith matures. You begin to see that peace does not come from winning arguments or proving your point, but from knowing that God is in control. It is important to remember that God's justice is never separated from His holiness. He cannot ignore sin, nor can He be influenced by emotion or favoritism. He judges righteously without bias and with complete knowledge of the truth. Even when outcomes seem unequal in the present, eternity will reveal the fullness of His justice. Nothing will remain unresolved, and nothing will be hidden forever. At the same time, God's handling of those who hurt you does not mean He approves of their actions. His patience should never be mistaken for permission. Every opportunity given for repentance is also a reminder of responsibility. God's kindness is meant to lead hearts toward change, not away from accountability. If change does not come, justice will. While God is dealing with the other person, He is also guarding you. He knows that bitterness can slowly erode your joy and distort your perspective. By asking you to trust His justice, He is actually protecting your peace. You are spared the exhaustion of constantly replaying the offense, the frustration of seeking validation, and the heaviness of carrying resentment. God's justice allows you to move forward without dragging the past behind you. There will come a time when you will look back and realize that God handled the situation far better than you ever could have. You will see how He preserved your integrity, how He kept your heart from becoming like the one who hurt you, and how He led you through the pain with wisdom and grace. Even when you could not see His hand at work, He was arranging outcomes that honored truth, protected your future, and upheld what was right in ways that only He could accomplish. When you have been deeply hurt, forgiveness often feels like the hardest request God could place before you. Everything inside you may resist it, because forgiveness can sound like surrendering your right to be angry or pretending that the pain did not matter. But God never asks you to forgive because the hurt was small. He asks you to forgive because He knows what unforgiveness will do to your heart if it is allowed to remain. Forgiveness is not an emotion that suddenly appears when the pain fades. It is a deliberate decision to trust God with what you cannot fix on your own. Unforgiveness has a quiet way of settling into the heart. It may begin as justified anger, but over time, it can harden into bitterness. God understands how easily this happens, especially when the wound is deep and unresolved. That is why He calls forgiveness a pathway to freedom. He sees that holding on to resentment ties you to the very pain you want to escape. Every time the memory resurfaces, the wound is reopened. Forgiveness, on the other hand, begins to loosen that grip, allowing healing to start where hurt once dominated. Forgiveness does not mean you deny what happened or minimize its impact. God never asks you to rewrite the truth or excuse wrongdoing. He is a God of truth, and He knows exactly how serious the offense was. Forgiveness means you choose to release the offender into God's hands, trusting Him to deal with the situation justly. It is an act of faith that says, I will no longer let this pain control my thoughts, my emotions, or my future. Many people struggle with forgiveness because they believe it requires immediate emotional peace. In reality, forgiveness often happens before feelings change. You may forgive while still grieving, while still feeling anger rise unexpectedly, while still learning to trust again. God honors that obedience. He meets you in the process, gradually softening your heart and restoring what was damaged. Healing rarely comes all at once. It unfolds as you continue to surrender the pain to God day by day. God also knows that unforgiveness affects more than just your relationship with the person who hurt you. It spills into other areas of life, shaping how you see people, how you respond to new situations, and how open your heart remains. Over time, unresolved bitterness can steal joy, cloud judgment, and weaken spiritual sensitivity. God's call to forgiveness is an invitation to protect the wholeness of your soul. Forgiveness does not always lead to reconciliation. and God does not demand that you place yourself back into harmful situations. Trust must be rebuilt, and in some cases, distance is necessary. Forgiveness is about releasing resentment, not removing wisdom. God values your safety and emotional health. He gives discernment to know when boundaries are required and strength to uphold them without guilt. There will be moments when forgiving feels unfair, especially if the other person shows no remorse. In those moments, remember that forgiveness is not about their response, it is about your freedom. God sees your obedience even when no one else does. He understands the courage it takes to forgive without an apology, to let go without closure. Your willingness to forgive becomes an offering of trust, placed in the hands of a God who sees and rewards faithfulness. As you walk in forgiveness, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. The offense no longer defines you. Your identity shifts from being a victim of hurt to a person anchored in grace. God uses forgiveness to reshape your hurt, making it more resilient, more compassionate, and more deeply rooted in Him. The pain may be part of your story, but it no longer has the final word. Over time, you may notice that the memory loses its sharpness. What once triggered strong emotions begins to fade in intensity. This does not mean the event is forgotten. It means it no longer controls you. God replaces heaviness with peace, anger with clarity, and resentment with quiet strength. Forgiveness creates space for God to heal places you did not even realize were wounded, allowing your heart to breathe again and your spirit to move forward without the weight of yesterday's pain. Pain has a way of changing the way you see yourself and the world around you. When someone hurts you deeply, it can shake your confidence, weaken your sense of security, and leave you questioning things you once believed were certain. God understands this inner shaking. He knows that pain is not only an emotional experience, but a refining process that touches every part of your life. In moments you wish had never happened, God is quietly at work, using the difficulty to shape you in ways comfort never could. God does not waste pain. What feels like a setback is often a season of preparation. When hurt enters your life, it exposes areas of weakness, unmet needs, and misplaced expectations. This exposure is uncomfortable, but it is also necessary for growth. God uses these moments to draw your attention back to Him, reminding you that your ultimate security does not rest in people, but in His unchanging nature. Through pain, He teaches you where true strength comes from. As you walk through hardship, God begins to refine your character. He teaches patience when waiting feels unbearable, humility when pride would be easier, and endurance when quitting seems tempting. These qualities are not formed in moments of ease. They are shaped in seasons when trusting God requires intentional effort. Pain strips away illusions of control and replaces them with deeper dependence on Him. In that dependence, faith becomes stronger and more authentic. God also uses pain to deepen your understanding of His presence. In times of comfort, it is easy to rely on routines and surface-level faith. But in times of hurt, you learn to cling to God with honesty and desperation. Prayer becomes less formal and more real. Scripture becomes a source of survival rather than information. Through this closeness, God reveals Himself not just as powerful, but as personal and compassionate. Another way God uses pain is by reshaping your perspective. Hurt has a way of slowing you down and forcing reflection. You begin to see what truly matters and what does not. Priorities shift. Relationships are evaluated more carefully. God uses these moments to teach discernment, helping you recognize which voices deserve influence in your life and which ones do not. Pain becomes a teacher that sharpens wisdom. There is also a deep strength that develops through adversity. Each time you endure pain without losing hope, you grow more resilient. You discover that you can survive what once felt impossible. God builds an inner strength that does not depend on circumstances.